Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Buy a Business Near Me. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to another exciting and informative edition of Buy a Business Near Me. Stone Payton here with you this morning, and this is going to be a good one. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast with Momentum Company's Chantay Allen. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you, Stone?
I am doing well. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. I got a ton of questions, Chantay. We likely won't get to them all, but let's start, if we could, with you painting a little bit of a picture, mission, purpose. What are you and your team really out there trying to do for folks?
Sure, Stone. Well, as a business broker, I specialize in selling businesses. I help prepare sellers or, buyers for the process. I make sure that they have the right resources to be successful in the transaction. I work with the deal team as a business broker. So my deal team consists of a transactional attorney, CPAs, maybe SBA lenders if financing is necessary. And so I cooperate with all of the team members to make sure that the sale of the business is successful.
How did you get in this line of work?
I was recruited by a client. So I've been selling businesses. In March, it'll make 9 years. So about 9 years ago, I had a client, give me their commercial that I should really come on board. And I had never heard of this before. So I'm kind of like, can't we just focus on what you hired me to do? And so this guy was like a grandfather to me. And so I kept getting these little commercials, and I was invited to, I think, come meet his family. He's very family oriented. And so I met his family, and basically it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was on a whim, but there was an opportunity for me to go along to a business meeting. And they had a particular listing that was actually at the time it was in the process of being listed. And the potential seller was really in a tough situation because it was regarding like a health issue and with a family member. So, and this happens often as a business broker where the reason why they need to sell the business or what prompts them to sell the business may be something like a pending health crisis or something. So it was right in my wheelhouse because I actually have a background in the wellness space. And so when the head broker and the client, the potential seller, once I engaged them with a round of questions, this seller said, okay, she needs to sell this business. And so that was one of my first listings. There was another challenge that I had where the head broker was seeing if I had what it took to sell businesses, because there is a skill set. But there was another business that no one could sell that I looked at the file, blew dust off the file. It was actually a convenience store in downtown Wilmington. And that they had some issues with getting it, sold. And I got it sold. So that is, pretty much the backstory. Once I actually successfully sold a business and then another business, I thought, okay, I could do this. And then from there, I sold a Italian restaurant that had been in Wilmington for 10 years. And, we just kept going. So that gave me the confidence that this is a service that I can provide.
So 9+ years in, what are you finding the most rewarding about the work? What's the most fun about it these days for you?
Well, Stone, I do like business. I like various aspects of it. And I think what has been rewarding is helping the seller who has been, typically the business owner for At least 3 years. I mean, I have business owners who've had what they call their baby, for a decade or more, of course, but ensuring that they get an ROI. There are business owners who have to close shop and they have really nothing but a collection of memories to show for after it's said and gone. So when I can help offload the task, because it's pretty arduous task of selling the business, and the business owner is able to just focus on their daily operation, and I can get it done confidentially, right? So they're not put on blast. I'm able to sell the business, and it's very seamless. They are very happy about that process, and then they've got some money in their pocket to invest in their future, apart from being the owner of that particular business.
So walk us through the process, if you will, and maybe, you reflect on a use case that you remember, or you can use Business RadioX if you want. I'm a managing partner and equity partner of the network, the Business RadioX network. Me and my business partner, Lee Cantor, we've been doing this for 21 years. If we were looking to shape an exit, you can use that as a use case, but just kind of give us some of the highlights of what the process looks like from the seller's perspective.
Sure, Stone. So, number one, sometimes the potential seller didn't realize they wanted to sell their business until I approached them in some way. Where, it didn't really occur to them that, yeah, actually, I do want to do this. But sometimes you have a seller who is seeking, someone to sell their business. I find that's often rare, but sometimes you do. And then oftentimes, you have to kind of bring up the idea, so to speak. And I've done this by just having a conversation with someone who owns the business, how long they've been in the business. Bottom line is, once they reach the point where they are open to the idea of selling their business, I help them get started. So there would be a listing meeting to get the process started. And I make sure that the potential seller is prepared for that listing meeting by having the last 3 years of their financials. That includes their profit and loss statements, a balance sheet, tax returns, a list of the FF&E and inventory, that are vital to the business. And, we review those financials. I ask, list of questions to determine what their seller's discretionary earnings are. I have to get both, quantitative and qualitative info, from them to really get a grasp on the business that I would, be putting on the market. And so once I have all that information, I take the financials, back to my valuation team and have to determine what the list price is, right? So once I have a list price that's fair, then I share that information with the potential seller. And if they're in agreement with that list price, then we get it on paper. We do a listing agreement. Once I have a listing agreement, then I get to have a lot of fun going to work on how I'm going to advertise the business listing confidentially.
Yeah.
And so once I kind of I capture all the best aspects of the business for sale, and I, give it, like an alias, right? I'm not going to say, like, if your business was called Stone Payton Steakhouse, I'm not going to list it as Stone Payton Steakhouse.
Okay.
Because then everybody's going to know what it is, right?
Right.
So it may be highly profitable restaurant in Eastern Georgia or wherever, you're located, something like that. And so once the potential seller agrees to how I have the business advertised, then publish it, ready to go on the market. So that is essentially how the process gets started. And then I get to handle all the spam, calls or, people calling and, maybe they really don't have the means to buy a business, but I will make sure that I, talk to these potential buyers to make sure that they are qualified to purchase a business. And if they are qualified to purchase the business and they sincerely are interested in buying a business, then I determine, what their goals are. There's a process where I need to be able to determine, how are you going to pay for this? So if if I'm talking to someone and I'm like, okay, so I've got the business listed for, let's say $250K, right? And my potential seller is selling their business because they are relocating. Let's say they've had the business for 15 years. They're ready to get out of Dodge, go somewhere else, maybe join you in Georgia. And so they're ready to relocate and they're selling the business within that 2-month time frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they're selling the business, let's be more realistic, within 3 to 6 months is when they would love to exit their business. And I'm talking to a potential buyer and I'm saying, okay, and when would you like to move into this business? They're like, about a year or two, not going to work, right? My seller wants to exit their business in less than a year. You're not prepared to buy a business for another year or two. So this is not the ideal buyer. So I make sure that I go through that process. It's very selective to ensure that we have the right buyer for this business. I also, consider things like personalities.
Mm-hmm.
If there's been a personality type that has been, a great fit for the type of business that we're in, and I can see some things that might be red flags, I take that into consideration. I don't feel like a potential buyer should be excluded, necessarily because of it, but I do take that into account to make sure that we don't have like a left fielder put in place. And you have to think about those things when it comes to small business. When it comes to small business, things have to fit like a puzzle because, we don't want the Joe Schmuckatelli moving into this business because they have the means to do it, but they don't really have the personality. They don't really have the skills. They're a fish out of water. Maybe they have the money to buy a beauty business, but there's nothing about them. They don't have the background experience, to operate or even be, maybe a silent partner in one. So all of those things have to be evaluated when you're looking at the right fit. And sellers appreciate that because they know that you're not just doing this for the money, right? You want whoever buys that business to be able to thrive after you sell it. So I have to make sure that in this move that we're going to make together, it's the right move for both parties.
When you put your valuation team on this, you come up with a number and it's based on experience and expertise and reality. Do you ever find that you swing back around to the seller? It's not even close maybe to what they were hoping to get for the business. And maybe sometimes they have sentimental attachment to it. And in that case, might you say, look, you might get a lot closer to what you're looking for, but you need to get these ducks in a row and get these financials looking like this before we can go out to the market and ask that kind of number? Does that ever happen?
That's a really good question, Stone. So, and yes, it happens. You hit on something very important. The seller has to be happy. And so what I would do then is I would offer to help them increase the profitability of their business.
Yeah.
And so we could schedule a consultation and I can let them know what they could do to improve the business. So there is a, much larger ROI. And I've got the experience in place to help do that. I have had clients who were not expecting the list price to be what it turned out to be. And I said, hey, here's what we can improve. It may take you another year. It may take you another 2 years to get it to where you want the business to be. Having a background in sales, I have, however, worked with a seller to increase their profitability within like a quarter of a year.
Wow.
Yeah. If they listen to me, we can get it done. We can get it done soon. But yeah.
So in that vein, I guess one of the things I'm picking up in this conversation is you don't reach out to Chantay if you want to necessarily, only if you want to sell the business now or in a few months. You might want to get with Chantay kind of early, right? And make sure you do have your ducks in a row and get everything prepared so that you get the best return. Is that accurate?
Bingo.
It's not like you're trying to make your money from this transaction tomorrow. You're accustomed to that longer ride in some cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So preparation is key. And I think in most cases, there's going to be a client where they, for the most part, have all the information we need in place, like the financials. But part of the work that I have to do up front is getting them prepared to sell.
Yeah.
That really is, as a business broker and consultant, that is what I probably spend a lot of my time on, is getting it ready for the market. So it's not necessarily a fast turnaround process. And the seller experiences that, when they're working with me, they go, oh gosh. And I was like, but if we get all these things, all these ducks in a row, you're going to be, thanking me once we have a buyer, because you're going to pay for it if you don't have these things in place. If you're in a due diligence process, they'll come back to haunt you. So if you're not ready. So, and me, but definitely my client. So I want the process to be seamless, and I really go through it. When I have a buyer, drilling me with questions, I really have to have all of the necessary financials and background information about the business. It could be, getting prepared could be even knowing, okay, I may have to know, you've been at this location for 5 years. Have you been anywhere else? Like, I have to know this seller's, whole story. I have to know, staff information and whatnot. So there's a lot that goes into that. And, part of my job is making sure I make the process easier for the seller to go through. So it's a pleasant experience for all parties involved.
You touched on this early in the conversation, but I am interested to know how the whole sales and marketing thing works for a practice like yours, like how you get the new business. Is it all referral, or do you find yourself out there having to shake the trees a little bit? Just speak to that, if you would.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, you should, if you have connections, you will have people refer potential sellers to you or buyers to you. Now, my best referrals have come from satisfied clients. So if I've sold, I've gotten referrals from a client because I sold 2 of their businesses. We're like, well, she sold 2 of my businesses. So of course I'm going to, refer people to her. So that is one way. And then you do have to knock on doors, so to speak. It's not one of those businesses, because this is not like real estate where everything's on MLS.
Right. Right.
You are confidentially selling somebody's baby.
Yeah.
And so you have to be trusted by the seller, that you're going to remain discreet. You don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart.
Well, in 9+ years in, I'm operating under the impression you probably have this group of people that buy and sell businesses. So it wouldn't surprise me if you could go to some of them early on and say, "Hey, I got another good one, something you might want to take a look at, Joe," or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and Stone, it'll be 9 years in March. But so almost there. But yeah, so I can do that. I do have the, proven capabilities of selling a business. I do have a reputation among my clients in the New Hanover, Brunswick County, Pender area. But when you have a conversation with the seller, you can't do it in front of people. I mean, you have to be very careful, very respectful of their business operation, because what if, their employee overhears you talking and they go, "Oh, I better get out of here." Like, they start to get apprehensive about their employment, and they're like, "Oh, wait, boss is going to sell," and then before you know it, people are abandoning ship. We can't have that.
Right.
So how you approach a seller are by some of the old-fashioned means. Meeting in person. I believe my background with inside sales has definitely been beneficial, because picking up the phone, calling people, so that's still a thing. Networking, you can, meet someone definitely, through networking, but it's just not as, the sales and marketing aspect, advertisements, similar things that other people do for their business as business owners, your email marketing you can do. And I think that would, I think that's a good start.
And as the ball gets rolling, I mean, the mental image I have in my head is like you're the quarterback, because as things get going, you're coordinating with people who have specific expertise and experience in the valuation domain. You're working with the transaction attorneys, the CPAs, possibly lenders, and then so you're sort of marshaling all of those resources. The reason I'm bringing it up, I have to confess, I think maybe before this conversation, I was viewing your line of work as more on the transactional side of the continuum. And now I'm thinking nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, this is a very relationship oriented business, isn't it?
It is. And I love your football analogy, because I do like football. What am I talking about? I love football. And so, like the quarterback, whose role is to lead offense. That's what I do in the business, right?
Yeah.
So I totally love the football analogy. And so you're right. It's a combination of all those things, and kind of being ahead of the team, leader of the pack, so to speak, when it comes to getting the transaction done. And that's one of the things that you bring up a good point, because this is, a transactional, process, and it's so financial. And when people, and it's funny because, I'm an artist, by nature. And when I didn't run away from math, but I was in school, but I was always, into like I'm a creative person, right? Which helps me, as a saleswoman, and consultant, that's a benefit, but it is so much of it is numbers. And so when I try to help the seller understand, that it's so financial. It's a lot of it is, I mean, you have your quantitative aspects of it, but a lot of it is about the numbers. And when I have a client you know, really wanting me to vouch for, oh, but this, and that, and here and there, and this, that, and the other. I'm like, I asked him, I said, and you expect the buyer to take my word for it? You expect them to pay six figures, for a really compelling story? They're going to look at me like I'm crazy. I have to prove that it's worth it. No one in their right mind is going to pay thousands of dollars, to take my word for it. So in terms of presenting and negotiating, one of my favorite stories is, I had to, lead a conference call, with a, potential buyer whose spouse, has a master's in accounting. This conference call was over one check. And I say to my seller, listen to me, find that check. Okay. I was like, we got to get this done. And after that conference call, with the potential buyer whose spouse is a master's in accounting, speak 4 languages. Okay. I go through the rest of the process, and within 48 hours had an offer to purchase agreement. And that client, the clients who bought the business, they now have 3 locations.
Oh.
So I really proved the value of that business. It was a restaurant. And I steered the seller in the right direction to where they made the right decisions, I'd say they heeded the advice that I provided for the business to be more profitable. And the buyers were able to reap the benefits of that after the sale, to the point where they've been able to increase by another 2 locations and counting. So that is how crucial, the numbers can be in this line of work. And I think that's a really big answer for what I find rewarding. Is that good enough?
That's more than good enough. Let me switch gears on you for a moment. Hobbies, pursuits, interests outside the scope of your work. A lot of my listeners know that I like to hunt, fish, and travel. Anything you have a tendency to nerd out about that doesn't have anything to do with this work?
Of course. So again, I'm an artist. My medium is acrylic. So I do enjoy painting. I'm very active, with Pilates and cycling. Little known fact, I've been road cycling, for years. One of the last rides that I did was the Tour de Pickle. And so some cycling buddies, they were like, Chantay, have you done the Tour de Pickle? And I was like, no. And I saw the t-shirt. They sent me a screenshot of the t-shirt. And I said, I want that shirt with that pickle on it. I just did it so I can get a t-shirt with a pickle on it. Now, the t-shirt ended up looking nothing like the one that lured me in, by the way. It was awful. I probably shouldn't say that on air, but it was different than what I expected. So anyway, that is what attracted me, was having a shirt with the goofy looking pickle on it. So this took place in Mount Olive, North Carolina, which I knew existed, but you've seen the jar, like the green lid in the grocery stores.
Right.
You've been to a baseball game. You've seen Mount Olive pickled relish.
Yeah.
Right. So this little town in North Carolina has an annual pickle festival. And I was mind blown by how many people in this small little downtown area. There was the downtown where they were cooking on the grills and selling stuff was you were in a sardine can. And I could not find where this ride began. Where are all the cyclists? I'm asking people, the locals, where's this? Because it wasn't really, So anyway, I got on track. It was a beautiful ride. So as a cyclist, you're in different weather conditions. You could be going against the wind, with the wind. It could be scorching hot. This was perfect riding weather. It was fair weather, overcast. So you didn't have the sun beating on you. And it was a little hilly. And so I'm going, past a lot of the green. It was beautiful because you had a lot of kind of wide open country. And I learned that the Mental Pickle Company has been in business since 1926.
Whoa.
1926. And when you see that they're in like every grocery store in America, I was impressed by their distribution. I was like, wow, this family was booking it. So it was a beautiful, enjoyable ride. I think it was I did a 26-mile ride. And so, there was one part of the ride where these like rabid looking dogs came out of nowhere. That was my fastest mile per hour speed. That right there that I've got tracked in my Strava was that section right there where I was being chased by these little rabid, dogs. And then I saw cute little things on the ride, like a yard that had like a sliding board and a little, those little metal riding horses back in the day where it's like stuck on a thing and has a little boing. So, and then there was a billy goat. And so it was cute to see in the country, like a yard with like, a dog and little playground toys. And then this little billy goat smiling at me. Cause billy goats, they have like a permanent smirk. Even if they're sad, they're probably smirking, I'm sure. So there were little rural America, memories that I had. So then as I'm coming and finishing the ride, I go back to the downtown area and there was a deputy. And I said, sir, I've never been to this before. This place is crowded. And he cracked the best dad joke. And he said, yeah, the annual pickle festival is kind of a big deal. I thought, you get it?
Yes, I do.
Pickle. So, best dad jokes. So I do enjoy riding. I love the outdoors, and I may do the Three Bridge Bike Tour next. That's in South Brunswick Islands. That one takes you over. If you do all three bridges, you're doing 68 miles. If you do the first two, you're doing 30 plus, which I've done. Oh, please. There are riders who were like 80 who are century riders. They do like 100-mile rides. I've got clients who have cycled abroad. I've got clients who have shipped their bikes to France to cycle in France. And it's something that I definitely see, between that and art, that I see myself doing, through the rest of my life.
I am so glad that I asked. Oh man. Okay.
When was your last like outdoors adventure? You said you hunt.
Yesterday afternoon, I saw a buck. I couldn't get the shot I wanted on him, but I had a marvelous afternoon.
Where'd you see the buck?
In some woods about 15 minutes away from my house.
How far is your area from the Chattahoochee River?
Oh, not too far. This is
Really?
Actually a different area. It's Lake Allatoona and Kellogg Creek, but I'm 20 minutes or less from Chattahoochee.
I read a book about a month ago about the first female river keeper and what it took to clean up that river. And I know some people in Athens, Georgia, which is also not far from it. So that's really good. You get to kind of zone out, and be in the woods. And I'm sure you. Do you have any family that goes along with you, or hunting buddies that you take with you? Do you go by yourself?
A little bit of both. Yesterday was by myself. My brother drives up from Florida about once a month. I've got friends at Wildlife Action of Georgia, which is adjacent to this, which is a nonprofit that kind of helps disabled people and urban kids and other kids and introduces them to outdoors. And so we go canoeing with them. We teach them about hunting, fishing, camping, all that stuff. So I get to hang out with a lot of folks on this trek.
So with hunting, is it similar to other things where you have to be licensed? Where, like, does your license only work for your area in Georgia, or if you're in North Carolina, can you use your license to hunt in North Carolina?
I would have to get a different license, but I have a Florida license, a Georgia license, and if I go on a paid hunt, I buy that license. And so, yeah, you have to, it's pretty well regulated. And I want to. I'm happy to pay because that helps go towards conservation and preserving, what I'm able to enjoy for future generations.
So have you ever hunted in North Carolina ever?
I have not, but now you're piquing my interest. You got an idea?
So, yes, it's an outdoor story. Me and some friends, you got to go to the Burkhead Mountain Wilderness.
Okay.
There are protected wilderness areas that you can hunt in. Long story short, we were in Burkhead Mountain Wilderness, and I was fortunately with 3 other friends. So there was 4 of us. We were getting ready to take care of some business in the woods, and then we heard a gun go off, and we realized, oh, it's hunting season. So fortunately, it was like we were further enough away, but it was within earshot. But we realized that it was hunting season when we heard the rifle go. So probably should have maybe picked a different time, but that's proof that you can hunt in Burkhead Mountain Wilderness. You're welcome.
Before we wrap, I would love to leave our listeners with a couple of pro tips, something to chew on. And look, gang, the best pro tip I can give you, buying or selling, trying to get ready to buy or sell, just reach out and have a conversation with Chantay or somebody on her team. But to tide them over till then, Chantay, let's give them a little something to noodle on, if we could, on buyer and or seller side of things.
Number 1, be ready. Be ready to sell your business, right? Secondly, have your financials. Selling a business requires them. Make sure your sales taxes are paid. That will come back to haunt you. It's something that the buyer that's an expense the buyer cannot take off your hands. You are liable to have your sales taxes paid. And also make sure that your website presence, your marketing, those types of things are in place as well. And have a plan for how you're going to invest, or, where you're going to allocate the funds from the sale of the business. Be ready to have a conversation with your CPA about where you're going to put that large sum of money, right? Especially as it plays into taxes, your capital gains and things like that. So that would be my list, if I just kind of like off the top of my head, would be prepared. I am not here to force you to sell your business. I'm here to help you sell your business because that is something that you are ready to do. I'm kind of just going back over it. Your profit and loss statements, your balance sheet, tax returns, list of equipment, inventory, and just have your business in order. Staffing included is another one that will help to make the process easier for you as the seller and the buyer.
Fantastic. And what's the best way to for our listeners to connect with you, tap into your work, maybe have a conversation with you or somebody on your team? Let's give them some coordinates.
Sure. So they can send me a message on LinkedIn. They could also reach me via email. And that is my name, Chantay, CHANTAY at momentumprojects.com. Those are 2 great ways to get in contact with me.
Well, Chantay, it has been an absolute delight having you on the broadcast today. Thank you for your insight, your perspective, your enthusiasm. You're clearly doing important work and having a real impact on a lot of folks and making their lives richer in the process. Thank you for investing the time to visit with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Stone.
My pleasure. All right. Until next time, this is Stone Payton for our guest today, Chantay Allen at Momentum Companies. and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you again on Buy a Business Near Me.